Hello everybody and welcome to, you guessed it, another A+ 1102 practice quiz, practice exam. And today I'm going to do what I usually do, which is I'm going to give you a practice exam question for every single learning objective, every single exam objective, and then we're going to go through why the correct answer is correct, and we're going to help you see where you're at when it comes to are you ready to take that exam, and maybe even fill in some knowledge gaps along the way. So I'm not going to take any more of your time. Let's get straight to it. A+ 1102 quiz. Let's go. Question number 1 from exam objective 1. Let's do it. The question reads, your internet connection seems slow lately. You decide to download a large movie file, but the download keeps getting interrupted. You suspect there might be an issue with your internet connection itself, not the download source. Which of the following commands would be the most helpful in diagnosing the initial problem with your internet connection? A. Trace RT. B. Format C, : C. SFC. Or D. Copy important file.txt d:/downloads. Pause the video if you need some time to think about it. You probably do. I'm going to go ahead and get straight to the answer, but please pause the video if you need to. Answer coming right about now. The answer to that question is A. Trace RT, or trace route, as you would pronounce it generally. So look, as stated here, the trace route command is the most helpful for initially diagnosing the slow and interrupted downloads you're experiencing, and that's particularly out of these options, right? So let's go over what traceroute is and relate it to some of the other related commands you might be using. So traceroute, essentially, it's tracing the route of your data packet, right? So it's saying, okay, it started here, it then went to the next hop. During this process, here are the statistics for that process. Here's what your here's how it went. Here's the performance of it. It made it here. There were no real interruptions. There was no significant, nothing significantly bad about that. From here to the next hop, it was also good. Here are the statistics for that. However, from here to the next hop took this long. It was significantly slower, and something really went wrong here. So what that allows you to do, of course, is it allows you to see, okay, so clearly I can actually pinpoint where something went wrong. So if we contrast that with the ping command, which we should hopefully know what that is and roughly be able to talk about it. Ping command is just simply says the packet made it to the destination, right? And it took about this long. But traceroute gets a bit more specific, and it says here's specifically how it went for each hop along that journey, and it allows you to pinpoint where something went wrong. So out of these options, this is the best choice. Let's go ahead and have a look at the other options here, though. So we had format C:. That one is in the name, right? So what it does is in the name. It formats your drive. So if you format your drive, you're essentially going to wipe everything. So wiping your entire drive isn't what you want to do if you want to test your internet connection. That's going to erase your data. And then you'll have to go and download all those beautiful cat pictures all over again. And you don't want to do that. Trust me, I've been there. It's a lengthy process. You don't want to go through that. You have SFC, which stands for System File Checker, and that's essentially a command that you use when you think you might have some corrupted files, corrupted system files specifically. So maybe you're trying to do something and you have a suspicion that some of those files are corrupted. You might run SFC. Specifically, you would run SFC/scan now to scan through and try to detect those corrupted system files, and then actually try to fix those corrupted system files so that you can get back on track and do what you're doing. So if you had a question that said you suspect you have corrupted system files that are preventing you from doing whatever it is you're trying to do, what command is the best? SFC would be the one for that. And then this one, again, D, it's in the name, copy. That's simply copying that file to that location, right? We're not trying to copy, we're trying to test our internet connection. So this one comes from exam objective 1.2, and the exam objective reads, given a scenario. So already we know we're going to, when it comes to our exam, we're going to get a scenario. Use the appropriate Microsoft command line tool. So we'll be given a scenario and we'll need to choose which tool is the most appropriate for that particular scenario, for that particular job we're trying to do there. So you'll need to be able to navigate. What does CD do? What does dir do? What does MD do? What does RM do, right? You'll need to be able to basically have a look at all of these, and just if you're at a point where you can talk to the person in front of you and explain what each of these are, you're pretty much where you need to be. So if you can say, all right, the ping command is going to show me whether my packet made it to the destination and give me X, Y, and Z details about that packet, and I would use that if I wanted to perform a simple initial test for my internet connectivity. Boom. If you can give a brief description like that for each of these, then I would say you're pretty much ready. You can highlight that green, say I can do that, no worries, and then just practice identifying them in some scenario settings, right? If you wanted to do that, hypothetically, you could get my A+1102 learning guide, but I'm just putting that out there. I promise, I won't plug myself again. I probably, almost certainly will. Let's go ahead and move on. So look, when it comes to this, you're going to want to just briefly be able to, for each one, explain the function. So what does it do? Explain the syntax. If you were actually typing it in, how would you type that in? And that specifically for if you happen by chance to get a performance-based question where you might have to simulate using a terminal, you want to be able to actually be able to type that in for your examination. And what I recommend you do is you simply come back here and you just practice using these in your actual device. It's a really simple activity, but it'll get you used to actually knowing how to type them in. And that way, if you get a PBQ on that, you'll be prepared. And then have an idea of what the output looks like. And again, if you practice using it, right, so you get the output there. If you practice actually using it on your device, you'll know what the output looks like. They might even, potentially, they could give you an output and say, what command caused this output as well? That would technically be a scenario that they could give you. So be ready for that too. And again, just practice using it, and that will adequately prepare you to be able to do that. Now, some questions here that can help you kind of get an idea of where your understanding should be at. So you should be able to describe a scenario where you would use each of this. As I said, feel free to pause and read this, but I'm not going to harp on about that for too much longer. We're going to go ahead and get into the next question, which is from Exam Objective 2. Let's take a look. The question reads, you are a security analyst investigating a recent attack on your company's website. Here is what you've noticed. The website has been bombarded with an overwhelming amount of traffic for the past few hours, making it inaccessible to legitimate users. Your team has not identified any new vulnerabilities in the website software that could be exploited, and a security researcher recently published details about a critical flaw in a widely used web server software version your company runs. Based on the scenario, which cyber attack technique is most likely involved? A. DDoS, B. DOS, C. Zero-day attack, or D. Spoofing. As usual, pause the video here if you need more time, but we're going to go ahead and get straight to the answer. Please pause it. Make sure you actually make an attempt at this question. Pause the video if you need to. Get into the answer right about now. The answer is a DDoS. So this is a distributed denial of service attack. So look, you've got the two types of denial of service attacks. You've got denial of service, and then you've got distributed denial of service attack. In this case, the reason it's a distributed denial of service attack is simply because the primary difference between the two, a denial of service is anything that causes a service, that makes a service unable to be delivered, right? You cannot deliver that service. So you could even have a potentially a physical denial of service attack. Hypothetically, you could walk into a place and smash the router, right? And that they would now not be able to access the internet. That would be a denial of service. But generally, when you're looking at denial of service, you're looking at some sort of cyber attack, of course. Now, the key difference insofar as your exam goes between denial of service and distributed denial of service is distributed denial of service. It's distributed across a wide area. So there's not just one machine doing the attacking, not just two. There is just an overwhelming amount of machines sending a large amount of traffic to overwhelm a server. For the most part, that's what it's going to be. So is it distributed across a wide area, or is it just one or two or three or a couple? Right? If it's a lot, if it's an overwhelming amount of traffic, generally it's going to be a distributed denial of service. It's over a wide area. It takes a lot of machines to do that. And the key giveaway in this question that tells us that's the case is the website was bombarded with an overwhelming amount of traffic. So it's bombarded with overwhelming traffic for the past few hours. So for hours, overwhelming traffic, you can't really do that with like 1, 2, 3 devices. You're going to need virtually an army at your disposal, so it's going to need to be distributed across so many devices. So that's why it's distributed and not just a denial of service. Now the other ones here, we had zero-day attack. That's basically an unknown vulnerability that's being exploited. So it's the first time it happens, the first time it's discovered. Okay, so if the question said an unknown vulnerability that no one has discovered previously was taken advantage of, that would be a zero-day attack. And then we have spoofing. Spoofing is basically you're pretending to be something or someone that you're not. So an example might be if you spoof your IP address, you're making it appear that your IP address is something that it is not. So you can actually craft an attack or craft a packet to say, tell the recipient that this package came from this IP address. I can't remember what the specific terminology is for that off the top of my head. I think it's zombie, but you don't need to know that for this exam. But yeah, you're pretending to be something you're not, right? So that's spoofing. Generally, in terms of IP addresses, is commonly what it will be referred to. So, that being said, that comes from exam objective 2.4. So explain common social engineering attacks, threats, and vulnerabilities. So you'll need to know about these social engineering attacks, but this one particularly was from the threats department. So you need to be able to, again, have a look through this list of threats and be able to verbally describe what each of these are. So you should be able to go, okay, distributed denial of service, that is generally you have a wide variety of machines sending an overwhelming amount of traffic to overwhelm a server. That's generally what it's going to look like. Denial of service, you're stopping a service from being able to be delivered, and not necessarily, or not through the use of a lot of machines, but generally through some other form. You're causing a service to be unable to be delivered through some format that is not multiple machines sending an overwhelming amount of traffic. Zero-day attack, it's the first time you've discovered that vulnerability. Spoofing, you're pretending to be something or someone you're not, so you might say your IP address is something that's different than it is. On-path attack, you've got the recipient, the sender, you're sitting on the path of that data and doing something with that, right? So you might be capturing it in the middle, adjusting it, and then sending what that valid sender originally sent, but you've changed that data. Right, that would be an on-path attack, and you should be able to do that with basically all of these, right? So that's where you should be at before you take your exam. Now, you're going to want to have a rough idea of course, what each of these do. So you're going to want to be able to do a little summary. So denial of service does this, DDoS does that, zero-day attack does this. It's really handy to have a document like this here, and I always recommend you should have notes that you can refer to easily, but I also always recommend taking notes in the form of questions. It's one of the most effective study techniques that I could ever recommend. So let's say you had this document in front of you and you've got it. I would recommend actually having a look at it and taking notes in the form of questions, and your primary notes would be you're trying to answer the questions that you've written down, and if you can't, you can refer back to the notes. But you should be able to read through the questions and answer it off the top of your head ideally, and then you get to a point when you're ready to take the exam where you don't even need to refer back to the notes. That's where I want you to try to be if you can. But anyway, that's beyond the point. Again, some questions you can read through. I won't go through those with you. Pause and have a read if you want to just get a bit more of a deeper understanding and have a practice at those. Now, third question from exam objective 3. Let's take a look. The question reads, Jonathan II is using his work laptop when all of a sudden his system crashes. He receives a colored screen with an error code on it, prompting him to do further research in order to discover the exact cause of the issue. Which of the following symptoms best describes what Jonathan has encountered? A. Boot problems. B. Sluggish performance. C. BSOD. Or D. Frequent shutdowns. Pause the video if you need some time to stop and think about that one. I'm going to get straight to the answer in 3, 2, 1. The answer is C, BSOD, or blue screen of death. So blue screen of death, essentially, it gives you a pop-up that looks like this. It gives you a screen that looks like this, and it will give you a specific error code that you'll basically need to do more research on in order to identify what the specific issue is. The issue could be a wide variety of things. That error code will tell you what it is. So the key giveaways here were in the question. So his system has crashed. That could be due to anything, right? But he gets a colored screen. Immediately we should be thinking blue screen of death. And it gives an error code prompting him to do further research. So that perfectly describes a blue screen of death. As to the other incorrect options, you've got boot problems, right? So that could be anything to do with you having difficulty booting. An example of that could be maybe you've left a new USB in your device, in the USB slot in your device, and now your computer's trying to boot from that, and it's saying I cannot boot, and you might have to go in and reorder the boot order in the BIOS. That's just an example. It could be a wide variety of other things. Sluggish performance. You could have programs running in the background that's slowing your device down. You could have malware running on your device that's trying to use your device to do some variety of tasks that's taking up a lot of your device's resources. So it's almost like invisible, and that would just be a matter of using anti-malware to have a look at that, anti-malware, antivirus software to have a look at, scan, and eliminate that. It could be that you have a lot of programs set to activate at startup if it's particularly sluggish when starting up your device, right? So there's a lot of things it could be. Could be any of those, could be a bunch of different ones, right? But basically sluggish performance, your computer's running slowly, essentially. And then frequent shutdowns could be because you have a device that's overheating. When your device overheats, it shuts down to save itself, to protect itself. Again, could be due to a wide variety of other issues. I suggest you're going to have to do more study to have a look at all the individual issues it could be. But essentially, this one comes from 3.1. Given a scenario, troubleshoot common Windows OS problems. Troubleshooting is the one everyone's always scared of, and fair enough, because you don't know what you're going to get. And it's tricky because with the other questions, like what does this command do, there's one clear answer. But with this one, you have to be aware of, it could be any of these multiple things, and based on the scenario, which one is it more likely to be? So the troubleshooting section is one of the most tricky ones, in my opinion, and my experience working with people preparing for the exam, and my own experience preparing for the exam, because I went into it with no IT experience myself as well. So troubleshooting was the tricky one for me. Now, again, as usual, you should be able to run through these, describe what that is, describe what the signs of that are, how would you know you have these symptoms, and then when would you perform each of these troubleshooting steps. So, right, for example, you'd have a section on blue screen of death. This is what the issue is. These are some things that could cause it. Here are some things you might do in order to troubleshoot that particular issue. Right, that's essentially what you're going to want to be able to do. Now we'll move on to the final question from exam objective 4, the final one. The question reads, during a routine system audit, you discover a discrepancy in a company database. The data appears to be corrupted or altered in some way. Management has requested an investigation to determine the cause and potential impact. What is the most important reason to create a copy of the affected database before attempting any further analysis? A. Creating a copy ensures the original database remains accessible for daily operations. B. A copy preserves the original state of the database. C. It's more efficient to analyze the original database directly to identify the source of corruption. Or D. Creating a copy won't recover any lost or corrupted data, so it's not necessary. Moving on to the answer in 3 seconds. Pause if you need more time. 2, 1. The answer is B. A copy preserves the original state of the database. So essentially, look, as outlined here, when you've got a corrupted database, it's crucial to preserve the original state of the data. You want to keep that in pristine condition so that you can actually then, or whoever it is that's going to come in, can investigate it without it being contaminated. You're treating it as a real-life crime scene. Don't contaminate the evidence, right? Don't go over there, start stepping on the dead body and start just like, oh, going in his pockets. Does he have anything nice? No, leave it alone, preserve it, let the professionals come in and do their thing. If you create a copy, right, you can ensure that you're leaving that original version in its pristine condition so that you're not disturbing the crime scene. That's essentially the primary benefit, and that's why you want to do that. Now, this comes from exam objective 4.6, which is explain the importance of prohibited content/activity and privacy, licensing, and policy concepts. And specifically, it comes from the dot point of incident response. So you have an incident that occurs. How do you respond to that? and it's specifically referring to this sub-dot point, which is copy of drive, in brackets, data integrity and preservation. So you're going to want to say, what does it mean to make a copy of a drive? Why would you make a copy of a drive? How would you make a copy of a drive? What are the benefits of that? Basically, what is it? How do we do it? And why do we do it? And within this dot point as well, you'll need to be able to describe the chain of custody, right? So that's basically a document that says, this is who had it, and then they gave it to this person. And at this point in time of giving this over, this was the condition of the document. These are the statistics and relating to it. This is what it looked like, how it operated. This is the condition it was in. And then this person gave it to this person, right? And that way you can see at what point in time did the condition change. So essentially it's ensuring that people are being held accountable for how they conduct themselves in handling that particular piece of evidence. And it's allowing you to locate where that went wrong and who to go to ask questions in relation to that. When do you inform, this one here, inform management, law enforcement as necessary? At what point do you inform the law enforcement? You need to be able to roughly talk about that. And then documentation of the incident. How do you document an incident? What kind of things do you want to put in documenting the incident? Things to that effect, right? So here, right, just again, a little section on the information you want to know specifically relating to this one. Copying the drive creates a pristine copy for investigation. The untouched copy preserves the original data, which includes deleted files, and allows analysis without altering potential evidence on the original drive. So you're just making sure the crime scene is not altered. Now, guys, if you have looked at this video and you thought, hey, this has actually been a pretty useful video, I've enjoyed this, I think I'm going to be able to prepare for my exams by using this content. I wish there were more. It's your lucky day, because over at journeytocyber.com, I actually have, as stated here, the only products you will need to pass your A+ exam. So if you're studying for your A+ 1102 and you've been looking around for different resources and you've noticed that there's all these books and there's all these resources, but you've seen reviews that these resources essentially just stray from the exam objectives, or they tell you things you don't need to know, or they don't even tell you what exam objective that what you're learning about is from, and you've got to try to piece it together. From my experience, I can tell you that's a lot of them. Over at journeytocyber.com, we've got a learning guide, and what this does is it basically gives you notes, gives you active recall questions, gives you practice exam questions, gives you detailed answers with explanations, and tells you exactly what part of the exam objectives, what dot point and what sub-dot point that is from, so you know exactly where to study. And as well, it gives you an online quiz database. I've got, I think it's 8 or 9 quizzes there, each of which have about 45 questions within them. And it gives you a simulated exam experience, and it's going to ensure that you're covering everything you need to know. So that's the learning guide. I also have performance-based questions over there as well, which has 7 performance-based questions, which allows you to really practice those things that everyone's really paranoid about going into the exam. The PBQs are what everyone always says they're really worried about, right? So you can get your hand on 7 of those that are going to essentially test your ability to pull in different exam objectives and not rely on those multiple choice options being there to save you and guide you through the process. You'll need to be able to synthesize it yourself, do it yourself with your own brain, right? So over at journeytocyber.com, if you want to grab those, go ahead. If you feel like you can just do it with the free YouTube content, Professor Messer has great free course. I highly recommend his free YouTube series. You can use these videos to prepare through a quiz format as well. You know, I break it down in exam objective here, just like I do over at the Learning Guide. But if you don't want to wait for the next video, you just want to get everything in a really organized format with online quiz settings, which allow you to prepare straight away. You don't have to wait 2 days for me to release another video. Then this is where you go, journeytocyber.com. I'll see you in the next video, guys. Thanks for hanging around, and let me know when you pass your exam. I'm excited to hear about it. Okay. Goodbye. I don't know why I bowed. See you later.